Hi everyone, I'm Sonia from KiteReaders, and today we have Joan Schoettler, the author of the multi-award winning book, Good Fortune in a Wrapping Cloth. So thank you so much, Joan, for being with us today.
Thank you. It's really my pleasure to be here with Kite Readers and share my book, Good Fortune in a Wrapping Cloth.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to talk to you today about your book, what it's like to be an author, and just the overall general writing process. So I'm excited to start this interview. Your book is set in ancient Korea, and it's about a young girl who is determined to be reunited with her mother. And the way she's going to do that is she's going to become an accomplished seamstress. So what inspired you to write this book?
I was at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and there was a Korean exhibit on ancient wrapping cloths called bojagi. And the colors and the designs and the intricate stitching in each of the bojagi really drew me in. And as I looked at these, and they were all different sizes, different colors, and different shapes, there was one in the corner that was done by a contemporary Korean artist, Chung-gi Lee, and she had silk screened photographs of women from the 1800s, and it was called dedicated to the anonymous women. And as I looked at both the wrapping cloths and at her photographs, I thought this story really needed to be told about these women who spent hours and hours making these wrapping cloths. And so from there, the story began. And of course, as I began doing more research, the story evolved and took on a story of its own and a life of its own.
What kinds of things did you have to look up, and how long did it take you to research?
It really took me months to research. The first thing, because the bojagi or the wrapping cloths were the first things that drew me in, I began researching them and contacted Chung-gi Lee, who was wonderful in terms of sharing her knowledge. And I began then researching the Korean culture, the Korean communities, what life was like in the 1700s during the Joseon Dynasty. I went up to the Asian Museum in San Francisco, did some research there, the Pacific Asian Museum in Pasadena. I read a lot of books, a lot of information on Korean life, culture, food, dress, all of it. And then it all began to come together.
Wow, so you completely immersed yourself, I guess, in the culture before really taking this project on.
I really did, and I had the opportunity to meet some wonderful Korean people in our community, and one of my very favorite times is when a family invited me to their home, and when they opened the door, the women and the mother and her daughters were dressed in the traditional Korean clothing.
Wow.
And when they asked me to read the story, they sat down on the floor with these beautiful traditional clothing on, and the skirts billowing out around them. It was really a very special moment for me to be able to read to Korean people a story about their culture, and the mother was so pleased to be able to have her daughters hear this story too, about something that she had not explained to them before.
What did you learn from writing this book in terms of, Korean culture or the writing process, just everything?
I think patience would be one thing in terms of, you write the first draft and you're gathering all this knowledge and information, and you put it down, and then you realize that there are all different ways that you're going to need to change it. Maybe bringing the character out, having her rise up to different occasions in the story, and I find that all very exciting at the same time. But I think that the patience, when I first wrote it, I was considering writing it as a middle grade novel, and then the more I looked at the clothing, the bojagis, and the countryside in Korea, I just thought, no, I want the reader to be able to experience that. And so I knew at that point I was going to narrow it down to writing a picture book. And from that point, I still wrote way too much and had to cut it down and cut it down. And I think that's a very important part is knowing that you get the story out, but then you have to really mold it and shape it, much like someone who's a sculptor begins with a block of clay and then is able to pare it down even more.
Did you model your characters after any people that you read about or any people that you know now?
I really didn't when I wrote the story. There wasn't somebody that I had in mind. But when I finished it and started looking at it, preparing some for a presentation, I looked more closely at Jesu and I looked more closely at myself, and I saw that both of us had some commonalities. And one is that she really wanted to become accomplished in sewing the bojagi so she could be reunited with her mother. So she worked very, very hard at learning how to make the bojagi. She studied them. And I did the same thing. I did a lot of studying and reading of children's literature, all kinds of books, which I've done all my life. Right. But I looked at them as a writer. And so I was studying a lot. And then she worked very hard and very diligently throughout a year. And I have worked for many years on my writing. And then when I looked at Jesu at the end, she is reunited with her mother. And for me to have Good Fortune in a Wrapping Cloth published by Shen's Books and now available for readers of all ages, it just was a wonderful reward for me. So I see the parallel between Jesu and myself in that way.
Mm-hmm. What were the challenges when you wrote this book?
But I think the main one for me was just narrowing it down. I had written so many more scenes in the story, and having to tighten it up and pull that in, rein it in, or maybe even giving up. I think as a writer, you write something and you meet a new character, you develop a new character, and then to have them disappear or vanish, I think that sometimes is a little bit hard.
What is your favorite part of your book? And if you don't mind, would you mind reading a section from the book as well?
Sure. This is the cover of my book, and my favorite page is this one.
Okay.
And move it up here. This is in the middle of the book.
Okay.
And I'll read the text for it because it's probably my favorite page of text too. In autumn, Jesu's girl cousins played on the swing. Once she left her sewing to join them, hoping to see the trees on the other side of the wall, instead of just the crowns of the trees like mushrooms peeking over the fence. Jesu secretly promised to see what was beyond the wall someday. Gold and orange leaves danced in the wind, and Jesu dreamed of the colors lining the path to Amma. I particularly like that passage because it really is at a place where she's feeling confident about herself, and she knows that there's something that she is moving toward, and she's very confident in her ability to accomplish that and to be able to be reunited with her mother. She thinks.
So how long did it take you to, let's quote unquote say, make the book from the research point to the publishing and to the end product when you actually had the physical book in your hands?
Well, I would say it would be a good 3 years.
Wow.
And at the same time, I'm working on other stories too, so this isn't the only one.
Okay.
I think the initial first draft probably took a few months for me. By the time I did the research and put it down, but then there's all that refining. As a writer doesn't just write something once, but there's constant revisions, and then the editing. Once Renee, my editor, sent a contract my way, from there it took about 20 months before I actually had the book delivered on the front porch and opened that wonderful box to see my first published book. So it does take a while. And she did a wonderful job choosing an illustrator. Jessica Lannon is the illustrator of Good Fortune in a Wrapping Cloth. She did an amazing job. I'm so pleased with with what she did and how she brought the story to life in her own way.
How is writing a book for young children different than writing books for, say, middle schoolers or children who are older?
That's a very good question. I think in some ways I'd like to share ways that they're similar is that you really need to know a lot about your character. You need to know what they're thinking, how they're feeling, where they live, who are the important people in their lives, what are their internal strengths and weaknesses, and what are their external strengths and forces that come against them. But when you're writing for a picture book, you're really needing to narrow that component down and look at how the introduction of the character, what the problem is for the character, what are the situations that they go through, that they're going to have to solve whatever problem it is. And when you're doing the same component for middle grade novels, but you have opportunities to put much more description and much more dialogue in it. With a picture book, you need to minimize some of that and invite the illustrator to take your words and then infuse their ideas and their creativity in the story too.
What is the main message in your book, would you say?
It's interesting when I write stories, I really don't write them with the idea that I'm going to have a message in the story. I want to tell the story of whoever the character is, and in this case, it's the story of a young girl, Jisoo. And so I don't think about the message, and it always surprises me when I talk to people and they share with me what they've gotten out of the book. When Renee first wrote about the book and she talked about it as being the story of a young girl's love and determination, and I never really thought of those words. Yes, I knew that Jessica loved her mother and wanted to be with her, and yes, I knew she was very determined, but it was through someone else's eyes that I saw that. Another young girl mentioned that she knew that if her mother left for some reason, she would do anything she could, just as Jessica did, to be rejoined with her mother. Another man at the Asian Museum asked me if I really understood how many layers I had in the story about women and the way women were treated at that time. So people come with different perspectives in the story, and so the meanings that they take from it are theirs. They're coming with their prior knowledge, and I'm just presenting the story, and I love hearing the way people engage with the story.
So what inspired you to become a writer? Is this your first book? Do you have any future books planned?
I do, yes. A writer always does, I think. This is my first published children's book. I do have other middle grade, I have 3 middle grade novels, one of which received the Sidney Taylor Manuscript Award from the Association of Jewish Librarians. I also have a number of picture books that I have written. I originally was inspired, I had gone to, first I've been a reader all my life, and I love children's books professionally. I've worked as a literacy specialist, taught children's literature and storytelling at the university, and so that's been a connection for me. I had lunch with a well-known children's author a number of years ago, and I asked her where all her stories came from. And she said, well, they're all inside. And I said, well, they might be inside you. And she said, no, they're inside you too. And I said, no, I don't think they are. And she sort of pointed her finger at me and said, yes, they are. You need to take time to let them come out.
Wow.
And at that point, I thought, I'm going to see if what she says is really true. And that's when I began writing, and it really was true that the stories that are inside you, they're inside all of us. And I think the creativity that each of us tap on in our life is so very important, whether it's writing or painting or gardening or cooking or doing any kind of art. And I think that's important. And for me, it's been the writing, and it's been very fulfilling. And I'm so glad I started.
Why did you title the book Good Fortune in a Wrapping Cloth?
Well, there's an old Korean folk belief that when you stitch the stitches in a wrapping cloth, with each stitch you are sending blessings of good happiness, good health, and good fortune.
Okay.
And so I thought, as I was trying to think of a title, I thought if somebody is putting each of those thoughts as they're stitching, and they also believed that if you took the wrapping cloth and you wrapped something in it, that was sending good luck, good health, and good fortune to the person receiving the gift. So it's both in the bojagi itself as well as when a gift is wrapped in that. And I think that's so true. I think that someone who takes time stitching anything for someone else, or creating something, if they're painting a picture or cooking a meal, you're doing it because you care for the other person that's going to be receiving it. And so that I thought that would be an appropriate title for my book.
Do you have any advice for young children who want to be writers? What would you say to them?
First, I'd say to read and then read some more. The more that you read, you come to understand story, you come to understand the way stories are put together, how characters move through the story, and how they change. So I think that's important. I also think it's very important to take time to write, and write every day. You need to know that when you write something, if you're going to take it to publication, or if you're going to be presenting it to other people, the first draft is not the final draft, that you need to continue working on that and polishing it, making it the best that you can. I think also it's wonderful to be in a writing group, and whether in a classroom a teacher sets up writing circles or has the children go through the writing process, that's no different than the writing process that writers go through, where we spend time brainstorming and then writing the rough draft and sharing that draft with someone and then doing the editing and the publishing. It's all the same. So I think that I know there are many teachers out there that are working through their writing process with their children. Children need to listen to that and then take the time to write also.
Thank you so much, Joan. I think that concludes our interview for today, but I look forward to seeing some future books from you and possibly having some more interviews.
That would be great. I look forward to that too. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share good fortune in a wrapping.